with our last panel of the day, I'm really excited to introduce the NBCU Launch Talks Breaking into Episodic TV panel. We've been really fortunate to have wonderful partners in Comcast NBCU for many years, have lots of folks to thank, like Robert Baltazar. I feel like folks in the crowd might know him. Tali Deeb. They've been doing lots of great work supporting pipeline programs of, people of color and folks that just want to get into TV and writing and directing. And for today, we have a really special program about writers and breaking into episodic TV. So we're going to kick off with a sizzle reel, and then I will pass it off to Michael Pogarian, who's a senior manager of talent engagement and inclusion at NBCU Launch.
Audiences want to see stories that reflect our world. Stories that are complex, nuanced, and distinctive. Characters who look like them and whose lives mirror their own. In our work at NBCU Launch, we provide access to talented people whose unique points of view enrich the story audiences want to see. We open doors that historically have been closed and offered the tools and unspoken rules for them to have long-lasting careers in television. We are NBCU Launch.
NBCU Launch has been an amazing partner in my 20-ish years at NBC. I became introduced to the Launch program when I had my first show on the air, which was Superstore.
Wait, that's a good one.
And all along the way, they've just been a resource in terms of introducing us to directors, writers that we might not otherwise have been familiar with.
As someone who's gotten to shadow myself, now I'm in the position where people are shadowing me. I've been grateful to have the opportunity to kind of pay it forward and hopefully impart some knowledge to the very talented filmmakers who are getting the chance to direct their own first episode.
Action. The fact that they're elevating, cultivating talent is a really big deal. And a lot of people wouldn't get these opportunities if they weren't there.
NBCU Launch was sort of that first stop of like, if I get into that program and I really do the work, I feel like I'll have a beautiful launch pad for my career, and it's panning out to be that way.
I am always going to be looking to launch first to try to find writers who come from different backgrounds, who have different points of view, who creatively think outside of a box that I don't exist in.
Being part of the program really put everything in perspective and gave me the compass I needed to really navigate the industry and being a TV writer.
To hear all my words come to life is really a dream come true.
NBC Launch program does a great job. Any type of dedication towards putting them in a position to understand, grow, develop, and more importantly, succeed. That's always good, because those are the heroes.
When it comes to everybody involved with making the show, I think most of them wouldn't realize that these people were there, like, from a program. That's the level of quality that this program has, provided the show.
I went into the program really hoping that they would be able to help me navigate this, help me figure out the business side of it, the interpersonal side, and I think they did. Launch really is the ultimate training ground for getting the soft skills of the business that you need.
Our partner, NBCUniversal, is ahead of the game by being there every step of the way to further inclusion. So all these programs are really rooted in wanting to change the way the world sees disabilities.
Through this partnership with NBC, we've been able to place students on productions like Bel Air, Ted, Based on a True Story, Suits LA, and Happy's Place. So we're really committed to helping facilitate the extra support that students need to be successful.
To have a team like NBCU Launch champion for me and other producers across different platforms. It lets me know that this is not a one-off experience and that it's a real relationship.
Community doesn't just happen. You really need to put effort into it to make it happen, and they're really doing that with this program.
It's so true. The thing that struck me was how they really had each other's backs. It was just really heartening.
Cultivate. Curate.
It's gonna be good.
Elevate.
What is it that I always say?
Start your career with NBCU Launch.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming to our panel, Breaking into Episodic Television. My name is Michael Pogarian. As Jonathan mentioned, I'm the senior manager on the launch team. And in my role, I help oversee all of those amazing talent development programs that you just saw highlighted in the video, TV Writers Program, TV Directors Program, below-the-line traineeships for production talent, all with the mission to getting talent onto our shows. And that's why I'm joined with two alumni of our TV Writers Program. The first is Hussain Pirani, who is a producer, writer on Chicago Fire. Hussain.
Hey, everybody.
And next is David Loong, who is a writer on The Hunting Party. So I want to I know you both very well, but the audience doesn't know you at all. So I want to start sort of from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about how you got your start into writing. What were you doing before you were staffed, before you were in our program? What were you doing, and what made you decide you wanted to pursue episodic television? Hussain.
Yeah, I actually grew up in Austin, Texas, and before I did film school, and right after film school, I was basically shooting weddings for a long time, and transitioned from that into commercial filmmaking and branded documentary filmmaking. And I learned a lot of lessons on that front. I feel like I eventually moved to Los Angeles and did UCLA's professional program, and then sort of applied to fellowships, which we'll get into. But the interesting thing about weddings is travel is one of those things that really inspires me. It sort of fills my cup. And so what would happen is I would go on these shoots and be shooting B-roll. And at the same time, I was getting energized and inspired by the things I was seeing and the interesting people I was meeting from work. And I would come back from a work day and crank out pages. And so it turned into sort of cyclical creative flow that would happen. And if you want to be a writer, you have to write. So that's what I was doing on side of it. And then that was the commercial stuff. And then the wedding stuff taught me an interesting lesson because if you think about it, every wedding film is essentially the same. It's got 3-act structure. It's Act 1 is essentially them getting ready. Act 2 is the ceremony. It ends with a kiss. Act 3 is the reception. And my specialty was post-production for this stuff too, so I would do the edits for these weddings day in and day out. And I was how do I keep this fresh and exciting for myself? It was getting to be very repetitive. And I realized you really have to focus on the characters. So you got the bride and the groom. You also have the supporting characters of the sister, the best man, the drunk uncle. You create moments out of these characters, and you put them in the edit, even these little moments, and it just makes it pop. So I took that lesson, and then with the commercial stuff, you're doing 30-second, 60-second, 90-second spots, let's say, and then it's over. And I wanted to spend more time with these characters, and that's television to me.
I love that. That's such a cool origin story, and everyone's story is different. So David, how did you sort of get your start? And by the way, David is the youngest, at least that I know of, the youngest person to ever be accepted to our program. So I feel you came in doing other incubators right from school. So what was your sort of genesis as a writer?
Yeah, I'd never done... Hello. I'd never really done anything creative up until my senior year of college. So I was always meant to go to law school, and basically took a screenwriting course in my senior year because I thought it'd be an easy credit. Seriously. And my professor was so amazing, and I think that's one thing that's really helped me in my short time in this industry is you meet people who really try to lift you up. And she really believed in me. She told me to, she'd gone to USC, told me to apply, wrote my recommendation. I go to USC for film, and in my second year, I get into a talent incubator run by Sue Hugh, who's she's showrun Pachinko, and she really also elevated me, and that's also through the NBC program. So that's how I got to meet Michael and Robert and everyone else. So
yeah, we were sort of introduced to you through Sue Hugh, then you applied to our program. So I want to talk a little bit about the program because you went through it now, what,
2 years ago.
2 years ago. For you, what was the benefit of going through a program like this at NBC?
Yeah, I think like when you're a writer, you don't really get taught how to navigate the professional side of the business. Like you get your maybe agents or managers at some point, but like the launch program is really granular. It got really, really specific on like how do you take certain meetings, or what does it mean to work as a staff writer or work on a show. You have all this access to different showrunners and executives and whatever else. So it was actually much more of a like professional environment than I thought it'd be. But they teach you how to navigate the industry basically, and that's I didn't know a lot of it.
Yeah, me neither. I had come from sort of a different world almost, but always this is something I wanted to pursue. So I was listening to a lot of podcasts, but I feel like the roundtables that the fellowship did were really handy. It was just, you would have sort of these roundtable sessions with filmmakers, with showrunners, and writers of every caliber, just sort of explaining their process and how they operate in the room and the ins and outs. And it taught me so much about just how a room is run in general. How to use the board, how to pitch, and you're also hearing their horror stories and things like that. So it's just such a great way to sort of sample the ins and outs of the industry, and you have a chance to ask them as many questions as you want and just get a really good rounded view of the writer's room so that you're not in complete like cold water shock the second you get thrown into a room.
Yeah, I love you saying that, because it really is almost like a finishing school, if you will, but it really is designed to hone a lot of the skills that you already have as writers and then really prepare you for the opportunity to staff and then be in a room. So I want to kind of like get into that, like break down like what does it mean to be in a writer's room, because a lot of times it's this sort of like thing that's thrown out there and no one really knows, but in TV writing you write in a room with a group of people. So Hussain, can you sort of break down the hierarchy and what a room looks like?
Yes, it's a long answer probably, but I'll try to like piece it out essentially. So you have a room of anywhere from 6 to like 10 to 12 writers essentially, right? That breaks an episode / a season of television. And I'll give you an example. So before Chicago Fire, I was on FBI International, and the way that there is a hierarchy to the room. It starts with a staff writer, which is how we started. David and I both started as staff writers, and that's the
Still
lowest.
am.
You're a great staff writer, David.
But I want to be like you.
It's coming. It's coming. So that's what's next.
Yes. So staff writer, and then story editor, executive story editor, co-producer, producer, supervising producer, co-executive producer, and then you kind of tap out at sort of executive producer and showrunner if you have your own show. On FBI International, which it no longer exists, but it was a great show, and I learned the most on that one. The way we would start is, let's say first day, we would sort of figure out what the season looks like, and it was a procedural, it was a police procedural, so we would sort of have our case of the week ripped from the headlines, FBI-related episodes. And from there, you would basically get assigned an episode, and everybody would kind of pitch what their hour of TV looks like. And from the boards, you would basically go through a whiteboard. If you've seen TV writers, it's like a teaser, act 1, act 2, and you kind of break down the beats, and you pitch this in front of a room, and you get feedback. The whole process is notes, guys. It's like notes on notes on notes. It does happen that way. So we're pitching this thing, and eventually after your episode is approved, you can basically go to an outline, and you'll write sort of a 10 to 12 to 13-page document that has the entire episode. That goes through notes of the writers. It goes through notes of the production company, which for us was Dick Wolf. And then we have NBC will weigh in at the end of it. And so it's just more notes, right? And then you get to write the script. And it's the same process for the notes on the script. It'll go through Wolf, Network, and then the director will read it, and then it's like, then you're actually making TV. And it turns out there's more notes after that.
Always. That was very concise, by the way. You did that in record time, I feel like. I want to like sort of follow up to that. So you are now a producer. So for you, what would you say is like the biggest difference between someone who is a staff writer versus now being sort of mid-level as a producer? What's the difference in terms of responsibility?
I feel like it's my responsibility to sort of lift up the people that are in the lower hierarchy also and just kind of help them out more. I think the advice I got as a staff writer was don't worry too much above your pay grade. And I think what I attributed that to is just, it's not on you if a show like lives or dies, you know, it's not on you on how it's received. There's so much that's out of your control. What you can try to figure out as a staff writer is like, what is expected of you from your showrunner? And I think you can just ask your boss. You ask the higher up writers, you ask the boss, like, what do you actually want from me? And that's something I did in my interview for International. And the answer I got was be a hitman. So you can take from that what you will. It was very specific.
I love that. Be a hitman. Yeah, I feel like everyone serves a different role, even as a staff writer. Like, you may be a hitman, another person might be like an ideator, or, you know, it runs the gamut. So David, I'm curious, like, you went through the program, you get your first staffing meeting on the hunting party. What was that interview like with the showrunner? How did you prepare for it? What did you talk about?
Yeah, and like the way that I got that meeting is actually good to talk about too, because like as part of launch, we did all these like 5-minute meetings with executives, and I like when I first heard that we were doing like 5-minute meetings, I was like, oh, this is gonna be a waste of time, because like what can you do in 5 minutes? But in one of these 5-minute interviews, I met an executive at NBC, Bryce Garcia. Shout out to Bryce, and he and I talked for 5 minutes, and afterwards he was like, "This is really great. Like, I'll keep you in mind for any shows I'm staffing." And I was like, like they probably all say that. But days later, I got this meeting through Bryce, and that showrunners meeting was my first ever. And you get all kinds of advice going in, but I think like ultimately like it's that truism and trite thing that people say of like being yourself and not trying too hard maybe. Because I just talked about, like, my bosses are really cool, Jake and JJ, and they were like, "Do you watch soccer?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they were like, "What team do you like?"
So it was more like a vibe check. It was like, can we hang with this guy? Was that the feel of the interview?
It was 95% a vibe check.
Wait, I have a question. Wait, how do you break down those 5 minutes? Do you know what you're going to talk about?
You mean with the executives?
The executives?
No, it was like, here is 6 meetings. You're doing 6 meetings today. This is the first person, second person. You're going from like person to person. So it's like speed dating.
There's a little bit more to it though. Like I feel like as part of the workshops, our instructor, she has all the writers prepare nuggets from like every stage of your life, so that you could, you know, if once you have written them down, you can potentially use them in any sort of situation or general meeting. So I feel like you were prepared, and clearly you did well, and you got staffed. Hussain, this is your first season on Chicago Fire, which is its 14th season. So it's a little bit different than like being staffed on a new show. How did you approach that?
Well, I came in mid-season on Chicago Fire, so it was a little bit of, I think you have to kind of read the room and understand what your place in the room is. And I kind of took my lead from a vibe check of the room, and also just following suit of what my showrunner, they'd already been planning the season. So I think for me, it was about adaptability and being light on my feet about everything they were already planning, and then offering ideas and suggestions when we were approaching new material for the season. And, you know, 14 years is a long time for a show. So it was also a lot of homework. Like, I had to watch the show. I started sort of in the latest season going backwards, or the most recent season going backwards, and from season 1 going forward. So it was sort of me filling my vocabulary of Chicago Fire.
And David, so you have been on Hunting Party for 2 seasons. What would you say was sort of the greatest lesson you learned going from season 1 to season 2? Like, what did you take with you? What did you sort of like take away from the experience?
I think so much of TV, people tell you like you have to like write to your showrunner's voice, and like you're there as a staff writer to like help the show. And I think like that's all really good advice, and you don't want to come in and like think you know better than your bosses. But I think like one thing that really helped me was really just trusting in myself, not putting too much pressure on like every pitch, going off instinct, not overthinking like how something's gonna land, just doing your best. So I think it's like a balance of like you're there to like help your boss make the show that they want, but also like you can do that in your own way, and like that's like you're pretty nervous going into that.
And also finding an ally in the room, I think, is helpful. Just like it's okay to ask for help. You know, I think people sometimes forget it. It's very high stakes, and it feels like there's a lot going on. You don't always want to go to the showrunner about this stuff because they've got a very full plate, but you can certainly find somebody above you or a peer, even below you, somebody that understands the show and how the people in the room operate. That was super useful for me. And just, I think if you're genuine and you are a decent human being, like I feel like people want to help.
Yeah, I love that. I love you talking about allyship, finding like your peers that you can sort of lean on and that can sort of give you advice. And it sort of like segues nicely into sort of the next step of the process once you're in a room. So it's like you mentioned, you're blue skying, you're laying out the whole season, then you get assigned episodes. And both of you were assigned episodes in your last season of the shows. So David, I kind of want to like start with you, and we'll play a couple clips too. So you get assigned an episode to co-write an episode, is that right?
Yeah, that's how the show works. So like we split all the episodes into two. So I got one in my first season and two in my second season.
How did that co-writing process go? Like, was it awkward? Was it fun? Was it like, how did you manage it?
It was super fun. It sounds like my show was a little different to like something like FBI, because like all the ideas were broken as a collective. Even before, like we would pitch things together and break them together, and if it went, and then we would assign episodes after that. And so like everyone sort of had like more collective ownership of the idea, I guess. And so when it came down to like writing something, it was like that felt like natural. It didn't feel like it wasn't like it was like, oh, this is your idea or this is our idea. So it was super fun. Got to meet really get to know some other writers.
I love that. Can you sort of break down the clip that we're gonna show from the hunting party, and like what episode was it? Break down with the clip, where we are in it, and then we'll ask some more questions about it.
Yeah, so the hunting party is a procedural, it's a serial killer procedural. So it's serial killer of the week. We have like a shadow FBI team who's tasked with tracking down these serial killers after they've broken out of a top secret prison. And so it's like the clip you're gonna watch features Kelsey Grammer as the serial killer. He's like a cult leader, and basically every episode starts up top with like a clip of the serial killer before they were sent to prison. So we get to see them in their prime and doing their nasty killing things, and then we cut to modern day where they've just escaped from prison. So this will be the pre.
Love it. Play the clip, please.
It's dark.
Ooh, chilling.
I do have a question.
You have yeah, go.
I would like to know, and it's okay if the answer is no, but like, did anything change from the script to that shoot, to the final thing we just saw?
No, like the funny thing is like the clip after this is also one of my favorite parts of the episode, but like we had imagined something called the White Room. So like in the prison that everyone's being held in, they were exposed to all kinds of different like tortures and treatments basically. And we were like, what if he's in a room that's like just white? And he was in there for like 20 years. And right when I pitched this idea, like there's a song called White Room by Cream. And we were like, oh, like, and that'd be super cool if we got the money to get, like, it's never gonna happen. And they got the song. And so like literally the whole first sequence played out exactly as it was on the page. Although the first iteration, we had him like, we wanted him to like be dressed in his underwear and like shoot like an AK-47 at the FBI. But you know, like that one didn't stick, but otherwise it was pretty much intact.
Damn. Were you on set for this episode? Like, did you get to visit?
No, I was on set for the second episode I produced, or was on set for.
So tell us a little bit more about that. Like, what is that process like when you have to go to set as the writer?
Yeah, like you're so insulated from production in the room. Like it feels like it's your whole world. You're going to the office every day. You're talking story. You're pitching stuff. You eventually write the script and then you send it out and you kind of forget about it until you're on set. But then once you get to set, you're just like, whoa, like every single line, every single scene is being scrutinized. Can we cut this? Can we change this? This location's cheaper or unavailable, yada, yada. And I think that just really, you're taught to like write like economically anyways for TV, but like the importance of that was really drilled into me once I got to set.
Yeah, I was not expecting how many questions I was expected to answer on set, like even as a staff writer. I was a staff writer on FBI International. We shot in Budapest, 9-hour time difference, so I can't just call LA and ask about how to remedy a situation. I truly was like the showrunner's proxy, and there was a lot of like power that came with that, and a lot of responsibility that came with that too. And I was not expecting like department heads to come with me to questions. Usually they go through the director, and the director is the one that would filter this stuff, but it was a little bit overwhelming for me for sure. The first time I was just like, oh, everybody really does know the script, sometimes better than I did. And it was a crazy awakening. Like people really care about making a great hour of TV.
As you've progressed and gotten to this producer level, like how do you approach those conversations now when you're having to change something on the fly, or like what's sort of your rule of thumb when you're on set as the writer? Like what do you sort of live by?
Rule of thumb is, best idea tends to win. And I think that you don't want to change, because the script has gone through all those rounds of notes that I mentioned, like you don't want to open that up again necessarily, but I'm a lot more chill. Like I don't stress as much as I did as a staff writer about these questions that were coming my way, because it is a conversation. And I think you just have to make your case. And it's a little bit collaborative. Like there's definitely a middle ground you can reach somewhere. So it's usually sometimes as simple as an actor doesn't want to be sitting and they want to be standing. And like these it could be as little as that. Or they want to tweak a line or whatever. And I think the rule of thumb for me is like, if it doesn't change the intent of the scene, you can probably do away with it. You don't have to be that precious word to word.
I love that. I want to get to you now on Chicago Fire. So 14 seasons, you come halfway through. Tell us like how does the room, how did you sort of approach that in like wanting to bring yourself to the room, but also like help create new fresh stories? How was that?
Yeah, 14 seasons is a long time. It turns out a lot of the things I was pitching had already been done. It's a rescue show, so it did feel different than FBI International, which is very much a police procedural. Chicago is also way more character focused, so like that's where the homework comes in handy of just like knowing the journey of all these characters. There's so much interpersonal dynamics that happen on Chicago Fire. So learning all of that, and I was not trying to drive the ship by any means. I just wanted to help the room out. I wanted to be an asset. I wanted to make people's jobs easier and not tougher. That's all. That was my role coming into it, and that's what I did. Sometimes it meant being quiet and just listening, and that was sort of the approach.
Yeah, and it worked because they gave you an episode.
They gave me two.
They gave you two. So tell us a little bit about the episode, the clip that we're going to see, and what was happening in the episode.
Yeah, I assume everybody's familiar with Chicago Fire, but it's basically a rescue show in Chicago. Shocking. Firehouse 51. It's like medics and firefighters working together. This particular clip, a new battalion chief has just come into Firehouse 51, and it's got everybody on edge. Everybody's kind of walking on eggshells because he's got beef with the lieutenant at the house, Lieutenant Severide, who's been there since season 1. And we don't know what this beef is about. There's a little bit of a mystery, and they're definitely butting heads.
Play the clip. Damn. Nice. I'm curious too to hear from you about, so going from FBI International to Chicago Fire, getting these 2 episodes, what was sort of the biggest adjustment for you in between the 2 rooms?
I think it was what I mentioned. I think going from a show that I was involved in from season 1, which was FBI International, knowing it in and out from the ground up to learning how this particular room, which is in its 14th year, operates, was probably the biggest adjustment. Just getting to know these characters and their backstory and their dynamics and their journey was a journey in itself. And I'm frankly, like, it's still an ongoing homework assignment, I think, to pick up, because there's so much nuance and so much history and so much like fan history with this show, because they've built a great audience over this decade and a half. So I think that just wrapping my head around the scope of a show like this and making it more about interpersonal dynamics and focusing on the characters of this show versus FBI was predominantly, 90% of that show was the mystery and the case. And this is a lot more character thrown into the mix.
So you make it through 20 plus weeks in a writer's room. The shows air. What happens when the room wraps, like for both of you? So David, like the room wraps, how do you sort of stay on the radar of the showrunner? What are you doing in the meantime? Give us a little insight into that.
Yeah, I think it takes some time to like be a person again. That's what I've found, because it's so, you're just like, for me, it's like you've been thinking about serial killers for like 20 weeks, and like all of a sudden it's like, oh, like I could probably run some errands, and like that takes some time. But like in the off season, like I've been developing my own stuff. That's been really fun. And that also takes some time to get out of like the voice of the show. And so like a lot of it's just trying to find that personhood again. That's the way I'd describe it.
What would you say to that question, Hussain?
Yeah, you definitely want to decompress a little bit. It's also, so much of it is about maintaining your relationships so you can stay in touch, hopefully. At the FBI room, we were, after 4 years, a lot of us had stayed for those 4 years. We were very tight, and we're tight with the showrunners, and I think it's important to just like stay in touch with the room itself, because you never know who's going to go on and do a different project down the road that, they may want to bring you on for something like that. And same with the showrunners, just like keep tabs. They're always going to have another iron in the fire at some point. Derek, who did, he actually started Chicago Fire and FBI International. So it's a crazy full circle situation. But he went on to do another show. And just like being able to send them an email and check in is very important. It's a business of relationships for that. You've heard that before. I do try. I think it's a lot easier said than done, because it does take time, energy, and effort to do all of that and to do the upkeep. But if you genuinely like somebody, like I think that's how you know you should be staying in touch with them. I think it's very easy for it to feel transactional, and I'm not about that necessarily. It's more about just like a genuine, honest connection with the people that you work with and hopefully will work with again.
I love that. That's such good advice. I think my last question before we open it up to the audience, because I want you guys to get your questions answered. Now, based on where you are in your careers, which hopefully you will be showrunners one day, looking back at everything that you've been through on The Hunting Party, on FBI International, Chicago Fire, what would you tell yourself when you were like first starting out in the before you went into your first writer's room?
That's tough. Hang on. Bear with me. I think there's a tendency for us to feel like it has to be perfect on the first pitch, or perfect like when you put it down on a whiteboard or something like that. But I think for me, I had to sort of remind myself that it's a whiteboard for a reason. It can be erased. You can you can restart, you can do over. And along those lines, I feel like you're also not defined by the work that you do. Like, you are your own person. You can treat it as a job and also step away and be yourself and find your normal equilibrium after the show wraps again, like to David's point. I think that's it for me. And also, frankly, like, I think it's also okay to celebrate joy before your life looks a certain way is important. I think making sure that there are moments of gratitude even while you're figuring it out is, I think, a great way to survive this business.
What would you tell your younger self 2 seasons ago, David?
I'd remind myself of what Sue once told me, and she, you can get so precious about the work or take it so seriously, and she was like, David, it's not building bridges. You're not doing heart surgery. It's just telling stories, and so that means you really have to have fun with it. And I think a lot of the time, like, when you try to rise up in any industry, like, it's like, where's my next opportunity gonna come? Or like, did I do well enough today? And like, ultimately, I think you do those things by like having fun and being nice to yourself. So.
I love that, yeah. Be nice to yourself. Okay, we will open it up to audience questions if you have any to Hussain or David about working on these shows in the room, if you have questions about the program, or just general industry advice. Yes?
When your episode is in production, what's your relationship like with the episode's director?
Did everyone hear that? Okay, perfect.
The relationship with the episode's director once you're in production, usually they will call you very quickly. As soon as it hits a production draft, means it's going out to the director, and the first thing they're going to do is mark up the script. And if they have questions and things like that, they're basically going to run through their initial blast of questions and what feels tricky, because they, on their end, if prep has not started, they're probably going through it, but on their own and having some questions. But as soon as prep starts, they're working with the AD. They're trying to see what's feasible. They're looking at logistics and budget and what can they get and locations and all of these things. And all of those questions will come through to you through the director. And if he has another pitch, they might, or she might have another pitch, then you can sort of work together, and you might have to change a location for various reasons. And it's an ongoing conversation, first of many phone calls and Zoom meetings potentially. And then we can maybe talk a little bit about sort of the prep meetings that we went into as well. For our show, we were only on 4 of them, and it was casting, and it was concept, which is basically going through the script, figuring out logistics. Then there's a production meeting, which is like similar to casting or similar to concept meeting, except that now you're looking at crew essentially, and like who's involved and what sort of technical equipment you might need for each shoot. It's more in-depth, more logistics-based, safety-based, all of that. And then the tone meeting is the last one, which is the writer and possibly, most likely the showrunner as well, sort of going through the script from a character perspective, so the director fully understands what the show's trying to do, because a lot of times these directors are hired guns, right? They would come in for an episode and then dip away, at least in the broadcast world. They kind of cycle in and out. So they're not as well versed in the show as you, the writer, are. So they rely on that tone meeting to sort of know what's going on and calibrate their episode so that it doesn't divert from the flow of the season.
Anything to add to that, David?
I just totally disagree. And that's all wrong, and no, that covers it, I think.
Any other questions?
Yes. I wanted to ask, I know you guys both discussed when you sort of get your episode that you are co-writing. For the other episodes of the season, can you kind of talk about what your day-to-day in the writer's room might look like working in a team environment, or is there other contributions you make to the episodes you're not a designated co-writer on?
Yeah, so like it sounds like FBI was a little different, but like for the hunting party, for example, like the start of the season's like, okay, anyone have any serial killer ideas? Anyone? And so you start pitching, everyone's pitching. So it's like, what if we had a serial killer who murdered all of her husbands on their honeymoon? And then you run with that for as long as you can. If it has legs, then it's like, oh, so that's one idea. And then you will work out exactly how that episode plays out over the 5 acts. And then once it's broken, then it gets assigned. So like that's how my show worked. So everything's sort of collective. So like when you see like an episode on TV, you sort of remember the break because everyone sort of did it together. And like the writing at that point is sort of, it's not menial, but like it was broken together. So, but that sounds a bit different to FBI.
FBI, yes, but Chicago, we did break, at least in my experience, we broke the story together in terms of what happens in the hour-long episode. It's a full writer's room. We're all sort of talking about, you know, the interpersonal dynamics mostly, like the B and C story, the A story of the episode is all sort of group discussed. And then we put it up on the board, and whoever's episode it is will take charge of like writing it and like sort of taking point for the meeting, but everyone's pitching ideas for what could happen, what the act breaks are, your commercial breaks. And Chicago Fire is very centered on the calls themselves, like the rescue element is like, what is this big cliffhanger for the teaser and what is this other cliffhanger for like middle of the episodes, usually 2 calls. FBI was a little bit like serial killer hunting party because we would start, you know, our meetings with sort of, did anybody read an article? It's a lot of rip from the headlines, right? So we would try to bring like interesting cases that the FBI is working on. And there were 3 FBI, so we also had to make sure like none of the other ones were doing the same thing. It was a little bit of extra work sometimes, but usually you could find a cool angle, and ours was set in Europe, so it had a little different spin and flavor to it. But
how would you find that out, by the way? Like whether another FBI show was breaking a similar idea?
So we actually have to pitch a slideshow to Wolf and the executive team at Wolf about episodes 1 to 9 is going to be this, and here are the rescues and the calls, and same with FBI. It would have been like episodes 1 through 9. Here's what we're doing, and they are the ones that would flag like Most Wanted's doing this, or FBI Mothership is doing this, and then we would kind of recalibrate and retool it, and then we do the same for the back half of the season as well. So. Good question.
Question for both of you. Like, what is the turnaround? Like, once you get your episode, what's the turnaround and timing of like when drafts are due? And yeah, how long does it take to write a script of or an episode of television?
So I had 2 episodes this past season, and with 2 people, it's slightly easier. But I think for the one we saw, that was like 5-6 days, and then for the second one was like 4 days. So it was pretty quick.
Yeah, I think on Chicago Fire we had about 6 to 7 days to turn a script around, and on International we were sometimes very far ahead on schedule, which was great because part of it is you had to give these scripts to production early because we would country hop. So the governments of these countries, like in Spain and Italy, would want the script ahead of time. So it was in our best interest to turn in scripts as early as possible. And on that show, we usually got about 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and we would still turn it in well before a production draft was due. And we would slip a script over to them so that they could start planning these locations and these scouts. It was a really ambitious broadcast show for that reason.
Yeah, so intense. Any other questions? I have one last. Oh, right over there.
Yeah, just to quickly paraphrase, it's like how do you keep it fresh essentially when you're 14 seasons deep, and you want to focus on the characters, but they've been on this journey and this path, and how do you differentiate year to year potentially? I think the characters do tend to take on a life of their own, so that does change the equation a little bit. Like the Severide that we saw in this clip is not the same Severide we saw in season 1, and they sort of grow. And I think as a writer, your job is to sort of, I think it's not so much like putting your voice into the show. It's more like putting your feelings into the show and wrapping it into this character that has changed over time and taken on a life of his own. Severide is now married, and he and his wife, Stellaride, are one collective unit in a lot of ways, and the things that they're facing feel so different than what Severide was facing earlier in the infancy of Chicago Fire. I hope I'm answering your question, but I feel like it's so much of it is just like honesty and authenticity from yourself that then you begin to add layers and history with these characters and dropping in. And just, I think, again, honesty is sort of the key to every one of these interpersonal scenes, because we've all been on we've all had experiences that question, that lead us to question sort of our own path on personal growth. And like you can take that and implant it into Severide and what he's facing, and just build off of it, with characters that have such legacy and such a loyal fan base. And the fans will tell you if they're not happy with certain decisions, for sure.
Yes, there's a lot of research that goes into what the fans want, and that is factored into some of the storylines and new seasons. So before we wrap, I just want to hear from each of you. What is one do that writers should do when they're in a room, and what's something that they should avoid? This is sort of like your parting advice.
I think avoid being negative. I think you want to be solution oriented. I just answered both questions, I think.
I love it. And David?
Don't be late, I guess.
Also important.
Yeah. Don't be late. Just have fun.
Oh, I love it. Just have fun. So on that note, I just want to say thank you to Hussain and David for sharing your wisdom. Thank you to the entire CAAM team. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, guys.